you see? All right. We have people just jumping in right now, participants. So David, let's give it a few minutes. So we'll get started shortly.
For sure.
How's the mic sounding? My new mic.
You
I
sound
feel very
amazing. You sound as good as you look.
well, hopefully better than my background that I've now blurred out.
Same with me. Can you hear me well and see me well?
Yeah, you sound great. You always look great. We'll give it a few minutes. We had over 200 people register, which is incredible.
That's amazing.
We've got about 25 on right now. They're still rolling in, and we're going to go live to YouTube tonight.
That's great.
Yeah. How are the TikToks going these days?
I haven't been doing it. I feel so bad. People are writing to me saying like, you need to do it.
You were
So
my famous TikTok friend.
I know. I'll try and regain it. I've been just so busy with the actual assignments. It's actually assignments that I'm very busy with.
Yeah.
And I do have to spend all free time on assignments versus TikToks. But I'd love to get back to the TikToks very soon.
For those of you who just joined us, give us a few more minutes. We're going to let people roll in. The numbers are still coming in. We'll get started very shortly.
Nice.
Yeah.
I'll put my information in the chat here.
All right. Let's get started at 6:03. How about that?
Perfect time.
And if anyone in the meantime has questions, we're going to be doing this live. So feel free to drop in questions and we'll answer it when we can throughout the presentation. And we're going to do an FAQ at the end as well. All right, we'll get started in 1 minute. Before we start and I jump back on camera, David, you were just saying how busy you are, which is great. I'm getting busier again. And it's interesting that I keep saying this to people. I'll go on camera for this. For me, I have always identified a market changing. It starts with assignments. So what I mean by that is assignments are toxic. They're bad. People don't like them. Oh, they bought on assignments. They're speculators. They're all this, that. Everyone hates them for some reason when a market is really bad. And I've seen this for the last 20 years. And then what happens is no one will touch them. And then all of a sudden, you get a few groups of savvy investors. I call them the shark circling. And they go in and they take advantage of assignments. So there are opportunities and people go and take advantage of the opportunities. And then typically what I see is then other people start jumping into the assignment market and more people who are maybe a little more layman, they're not the savvy investors, they start jumping in. And then I see that trickle into resale. So it usually always starts with assignments. I see action there. It moves to resale, which, as you know, resale has picked up a lot. And then the market turns. And it's interesting because I was saying that to my team, a few months ago. I'm like, let's see if that happens. But these are the patterns I have seen in the last 20 years, whether it was 2005, 2008, 2016, 17, 2021. 2024. It's always the same.
Yep.
Cool.
I
All
think
right. Well, I went on a bit of, sorry, go ahead.
someone mentioned that the chat is disabled, so maybe we want to enable that.
Oh yeah, cool. How do I do that? Okay, everyone. There we go.
Thanks,
Can
Nicole.
someone please type in the chat, see if we're working? We're rocking and rolling here.
Hi. Question and answer is working. Suzanne wrote.
Okay, great. So yeah, so I was just in the chat. So David, yeah, got it. So the webinar chat doesn't work, but we'll do Q&As. Awesome.
All
Okay,
right,
thanks,
Q&A it
Susan.
is.
All right,
Thanks.
guys, we're going to get started. Really, really excited to be doing this. This is our monthly Connect.ca Inner Circle Industry Expert Series, our first one of many. And I have my good friend here, a colleague, someone I appreciate, someone that I look up to, someone who I've learned a lot with, and someone who's helped me a lot in real estate. And I think it was fitting to start with you because I think I've probably known you now for 18 years.
Wow.
You've probably helped me close on, of my own properties, whether they're assignments or long-term holds. You've probably helped me with dozens of transactions.
Yeah.
Excuse me. So David Feld is the owner of Feld Callia with his lovely wife, Sonia. And he's an investor himself, which is really, really important. And he's an expert on assignments. So we're going to jump into it. Before I hand it off to you, David, I just want to cover a few things. If you don't mind, if you could go to the next slide. For those of you who don't know me, because I'm about to hand it off to this expert, I'm Ryan Coyle. I'm the broker, owner, CEO of the Connect Group of Companies, which is made up of Connect.ca Realty. That is my primary business, the brokerage. We work with lots of investors. We help hundreds of investors every year. We also work with people that are buying and selling their homes. So we've got a team that can help with everything real estate related. I bought Canadian Real Estate Wealth magazine years ago. I grew up reading it. I was very inspired by it. Then I grew up writing for it. And then I bought it 3 or 4 years ago. It's a leading source for real estate related news. We just are working on a merger with another real estate media company. Very exciting stuff. Stay tuned. Marco Property Management. I bought this company 6 or 7 years ago because I came to a critical mass with my own portfolio where I wasn't able to manage all of my properties and I wanted to make investing in real estate simple. So I bought Marco Property Management, which was originally a furnished rental management company. We have probably about 50 furnished units under management. We now have over 300 units in total under management. A lot of our clients have us manage their properties. So owning real estate is very simple. One Day Money is a private lending division. I started in 2019. It's an equity-based lender that would allow people to borrow against what their condo is worth today, not the contract price 6 years ago. And One Day Assignment is it's a company that has allowed us many dozens of investors, purchasers get out of their purchase agreements in one day or a few days. When there is enough equity, we have investors waiting that will come in and buy those very quickly if the deal makes sense. Next slide. And, again, before I hand it off, we take more of an investment advisor approach to selling real estate. And we kind of came up with this concept, the multiplier investment blueprint, turn one property into 7 and retire rich. And the reason why we came up with that concept was because my goal when I started investing in real estate 20 years ago was to own 7 properties and retire rich. And I've surpassed that. I now have a portfolio of well over 40 doors worth over $37 million. And it's really been a very systematic approach, which we sit down with our clients and we really help them to be able to create the structure to build a portfolio. We help you use the power of leverage to finance your properties and ultimately scale your portfolio to whatever your goal is. Some of our clients have a goal of owning 2 properties for their 2 children. We sit down with them and help put together a plan and help them execute on just that. So our goal is really to make investing in real estate as simple as investing in a mutual fund, help mom and pop investors all the way to savvy multi-unit investors who are totally burnt out from multi-unit properties. This is a QR code. If you guys want to schedule a meeting, this is my first time doing this in presentation. I hope it works. But pull out your phone, get a QR code. There is a form there, and you can schedule a meeting with me or my team, and we'll sit down with you. We have an intake of questions, and we'll find out what your goals are, and we'll help put together a plan to help you create a real estate portfolio. Next slide. And before I hand it off, this is the last slide for me. Real estate should be simple. I keep saying that. And it's so important to work with experts who have achieved exactly what you want to achieve. And that's why we're doing this expert series. That's why David is here. David has been a key part of me buying properties, closing on properties, assignments, regular properties. And that's really what we want to do is we want to create the team for you so you don't have to go out there and create it yourself. We've already achieved what you want to achieve. So we're here to help you. And we put together a team of property managers, brokers, accountants, real estate agents, mortgage brokers, lawyers, and all of the professionals that are going to help achieve your real estate goals. So don't reinvent the wheel. Create a goal, create a plan of action, keep it simple. And before I hand it off, this quote, I always like Robert Kiyosaki quotes. He gets right to the point. So he's the creator and author of Rich Dad, Poor Dad, which I grew up reading before I probably bought my first property. And he says the number one reason people fail is because they listen to their friends, family, and neighbors. And the reason why I like that is everyone is an expert, but just talk to people who have already achieved what you want to achieve. And I'm really excited, David. Thanks again for being here. I know the market has picked up, assignments have picked up, so I'd love to hear your expert analysis on assignments.
Thank you, Ryan. And for starters, I'll say a lot of our clients are your clients that you've sent to us, and they love you. And it is getting systematic. It's pretty cool. Like when they're on their 5th or 10th property, we have all their information, you have all their information, and it starts to become a nice process for everybody the more they do. So yeah, definitely enjoying working with you and your clients, and they always give us great feedback about you. So that's great.
Yeah. Same. And then also before we get in there, Q&A is live. Guys, David is going to be doing the majority of the talking. I'm going to have some questions. You're going to have some questions. Please feel free to drop them in the Q&A, and I'll answer them as we go along. David, you could jump in there, and if anything pops out, please jump to, answer it whenever you want.
For sure. Great to meet you all. And, we just do real estate law. We've closed 10,000 deals at least. Purchases, resales, new construction, everything. And of course, yes, we do assignments. That's what I'm here to talk to you about today. What I'll go through today is what is an assignment, why it's good for sellers, why it's good for buyers, pros and cons, what you should do before offering on an assignment, the actual process, and what to keep in mind, and the best practices. And of course, you can ask questions and answers anytime. Okay, I'll give the answers if you want. So first off, what is an assignment? When you buy new construction, there's typically a 50 or 60-page agreement you get, and an assignment is taking that agreement and selling it to someone else. They stand in your shoes, and you sell it to them, hopefully for profit. Used to be pretty much only for profit. Sometimes now we'll see an assignment even at a loss or on par. But when you sell that agreement to someone else, that's the assignment. And I'm going to take you through all the steps of that, okay? And that happens before the building is registered, because the minute the building is registered and you own it, then if you sell it to someone else, it's not an assignment. It's a resale. You're just selling a normal property. So that's the difference. So in an agreement, there's different reasons why people would assign and different things they would assign for. Like I'll give you one example. If you're already on an agreement and you need to add or take off a family member, these days that can be called an assignment, and there can be an assignment fee for that. So that's a normal one. And one example is the well, which is a very common condo that many people buy in. If you're just transferring to a family member, that would be an assignment. That's one reason. Another reason you could do an assignment is, let's say you're an investor and you buy properties strictly to assign them, which I've done that quite a few times. I know Ryan has. Some people buy to hold, and they may have to assign for various reasons. Well, one reason is you just want some money and it's gone up. So you're like, hey, why don't I assign and get some money and do another investment? I know I've done that. Another reason you might assign is because you can't close or something has changed in your life. And that's why it's good to buy new construction that allows assignments, because in some cases you need to assign and you look back to the agreement 3 years later and the building's not built yet and you can assign. So the good news is in almost all new construction, you can assign, and there's usually a fee from $0 these days. It's more like $1,000 up to $25,000, but that's very uncommon. The most common is $1,000 to $5,000, and we'll talk about that. Okay. As a seller, why would you want to assign? What are the pros of signing? Well, again, I mentioned you might want to get out of the contract without losing your deposit. So that's one good way. Another one is to make profit, which is the main way people do assignments is, you pay 500 and 4 years later, just before it's built, you sell it for 500 or 550 or whatever it is, and you make some money. So that's the great reasons why. What are the cons of selling by assignment, right? Well, and this is important. You as the original purchaser, if you sell this to someone else, and they don't close for some reason, you're liable to the builder to close still, even though you've assigned it, even though the builder has consented, you as the purchaser are liable to that builder if the new purchaser doesn't close, if the assignee doesn't close. So those are things you have to be wary of. And one of the things you should do to counteract for that is you get a large deposit from the assignee. So when you're selling, you want to try to get a large deposit from the assignee, and you want to try to get money released early to you. And we'll talk about that. Also, sometimes if there's a market downturn, the builder may not allow an assignment. For instance, if they themselves, the builder hasn't sold 90% of their units, they may not allow you to assign. So you may have thought you're going to assign, getting all excited to sign, and then you approach the builder to assign, and the builder may say, no, we don't allow you to assign yet. We haven't sold all our units. And that can happen in a market downturn. Although typically we are seeing most builders allow assignments in most cases. And in cases where they haven't sold 90%, they are trying very hard to sell it. And ultimately, if they sell, they do allow assignments. So we are seeing most builders allow assignments. And then finally, one of the cons of assigning, as in everything, is beware of the government. The CRA does crack down on assignments that you don't report. So you do have to report your assignments, and you will have to pay HST, income tax, on the property, which we'll get into. I think you wanted to ask a question.
Yeah, David, I was just saying it's unique right now in this market. I'm actually negotiating some deals with builders where they're putting in special provisions to allow us to advertise on MLS, which is usually.
There you go. So, and I'll tell you, a builder should, just so you know, in general, and I think I'll get to it, but I'll just say it now since you mentioned it, you are not allowed to list on MLS when you do an assignment. Okay, there are other ways, and Ryan can talk about them or not talk about them as he sees fit, that people will see your assignments and buy it from you, but it's not on MLS. But what Ryan's saying is nowadays, sometimes some builders, and you have to get written consent before you do this, otherwise you can be in a lot of trouble. You can list it on MLS. So make sure you get written consent from the builder to do that through you and your agent, of course. Okay. As an assignee, so we just talked about as an assignor, the one selling, but what if you're the one buying? What are the pros of buying? Well, I just added this one right now, but in some markets like today, there's deals out there possibly, and you can pay less than or the original purchase price. So for instance, imagine paying $600,000 for a $700,000 property. Now, I'm not saying that's all over Toronto right now, but I am getting deals in the door like that right now, and they exist right now. So you should be looking for them. If you're looking to buy an assignment, there are deals. And when I put it in quotes, you have to determine if it's a deal or not. But what I'm saying is it's a deal because someone was willing to pay $700,000 for it 4 years ago, closing now, and now you can get it for $600,000. Okay, so things like that. So that's one reason to be an assignee. Another one is getting into a building where there's nothing left. So sometimes there's nothing left. It's all sold out, but now you really want to get into that building for some reason. And I have a lot like that in some buildings right now. So people get in. And so it's good to get into a good building that you can, and then see the finished product. A lot of times when you're buying off spec, you don't know what it will look like. So you're not sure what the ceiling heights will be. You're not sure how the place will look. But when it comes to assignments, you get to many times go in and see the unit. Also, it's all new. So everything's new with warranties. So of course, that's great. What are the cons of buying by assignment? Like what would be bad? Well, you're still at the mercy of the builder. They're always changing the dates, and that's normal. You'll always see dates changing, and they're always fixing deficiencies. And ceiling heights aren't always what they say they'll be, and there's little things like that. Okay, so those are some of the cons. And another con of an assignment, but it's not really a con, is you'll always have to pay this $24,000 HST rebate on all assignments for sure. However, In all of them, you don't have to be nervous because you can get back the full 24,000 so long as you are living there as your primary place of residence or renting it out for a year to a tenant. And things like that, you know, Ryan, who we work with for so many years, he finds tenants for clients, gets that lease over to us, and then we immediately apply for the $24,000 rebate, which, by the way, takes about 4 months for you to get back. I'm just looking if there's any questions. What HST is payable? So I just addressed that, and I'll talk more about HST for sure. And thanks so much for hosting. Yeah, well, we love it. We love what we do. All right, so when you do an assignment, you know, when you do resale, there's one agreement, like the realtor does one agreement. I'm not making fun of the realtor, but it's one agreement, you know. The realtor does one agreement and everyone reviews it, hopefully, and everyone signs and it's good to go. But when it comes to assignments, there's actually really 3 agreements. There's that first agreement, the builder APS, or builder agreement of purchase and sale. And that's the big one. And that's like 55, 60 pages. And there's a lot of stuff in there that, as when you're buying it by assignment, you're stepping into the shoes of that buyer. So you really want an excellent lawyer to review it all for you, because you know, when you take it over, you're taking it over. And whatever little words in there that might be against you, you're also taking them over. So you want a good protection there. Then there's the assignment agreement, or RIA Form 150, that your realtor does. And you want to choose a very good realtor for that too. I'm going to be honest, not every realtor does assignments. So make sure you choose a realtor that does assignments. It's a big difference. Same with lawyers. This is not a shameless plug. This is serious stuff. Agents and lawyers may say, yes, I'll do it, because right now they could really use a closing, right? But honestly, assignments are a different animal. They're much more complex, and you need a good team of people. So anyway, the agreement is more complex. It's numbers based compared to the resale agreement, which basically says, you know, purchase price and deposit, and there's not much more math for the realtor to do. Whereas when it comes to this agreement, and I'm going to show you snippets of it in a minute, there's real math to do, and you could get it wrong. And so you want to be careful. And then there's a third agreement, and that's the builder's consent. Once you've done your once your agent has done your assignment agreement, and you've reviewed the builder agreement, and everyone's happy and everyone's signed off, and the deal is firm, and I put that in quotation marks, it's not firm. It's still reliant on builder's consent. So the seller's agent or lawyer, and that's always different, and we'll talk about that, goes to the builder with the beautifully signed documents and the money to pay for the consent, whatever that is, be it $1,000, $2,000, $3,000. And then the builder will review everything. And if they're happy with the new purchaser and their bank statements and different things like that, because they have to make sure they can afford it, they will give consent, and that's it. The deal's firm, and everyone must complete the transaction. So 3 agreements for every assignment, and a little bit, the complexity is higher for each stage of it, okay?
And I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, I've been on the other side of a deal where I've been dealing with a realtor who does not understand assignments, and it overcomplicates things unnecessarily, and sometimes it could kill a deal.
Yeah, and same with lawyers, because this is getting more, and assignments are actually getting much more complex today than they were a year ago. And I can tell you, we've revamped our system again today, even because we are seeing a need to add certain clauses that we wouldn't have been able to get in a month ago or 2 months ago. But anyway, Naipool said, this is news to me that the assigner is still responsible for close. Exactly. So people don't even know that much, that if you sell it to somebody, and let's say they only gave a $10,000 deposit, then they disappear. Well, now you're on the hook to close, and you would only find out a day before closing because they've disappeared, and all you could get from it is $10,000. So always get good, healthy deposits from the people. And we're going to talk about this, but if you have a choice of when money is to be released, get that money released to you if you're selling sooner rather than later, like right on consent. And that's changed too, Ryan. That was very common, to give money on consent. Yeah, as soon as the builder consents, I want my profit. Everybody wanted that, and everybody was getting that up until about a month ago. Now they're like, I'll give you some money now, but I'll give you some money on final closing, or on occupancy, or both on occupancy and final closing, the trickle feed way. So we'll talk about that.
And I mean, just to kind of finish that point, and that's another reason why you want to work with a lawyer and a broker who really knows their stuff, because that all comes in negotiations. The amount of money that you're taking as a deposit now and later, and the terms of the agreement are really important. And it's not just to protect people, but it's also negotiating. It's how much money do you want in your pocket now, or in a trust account, versus later, whether it could be, challenges down the road.
Exactly. Suzanne asks, can I advertise myself off MLS when I want to sell? My realtor is trying to sell mine. He does sell them often. But isn't having any luck. So Suzanne, the truth is, it says, I mean, every agreement is different. So I would say, send me your agreement, but every agreement does say you can't list it on MLS pretty much. Yeah, you should read it. A few don't say that. And then it doesn't say, it may say where you can and can't do, like it may say not online at all, or it's always different. So we'd have to read the exact clause for that one.
Yeah, and there are ways to do it. I have a team who are constantly reposting on different sites, Facebook, Kijiji. There's ways around it. Like you don't include the unit number so that, you're not technically advertising a specific unit. There's ways to do it. And then also if you're working with a broker who's been doing this long enough, I know which brokers to contact to find assignments, and brokers know to contact me to find assignments for their clients as well. So, there's networks of brokers, real estate brokers, mortgage brokers, lawyers. You know about deals as well, and then databases. So you can advertise to a database as well. So there's just ways to do it without the MLS if done properly.
There you go. So before you do make an offer on assignment, I'm kind of summing up things we've already said. Make sure you're allowed to assign it, because you don't want to go through the whole process of finding a buyer only to find out you weren't even allowed to assign it. So an email to the builder is good. Hey, we're thinking of assigning. Please let us know. Never hurts. Then you check out those restrictions. Like we said, can I list it on MLS? Probably not. Where can I put it? Who can help me get it where I need to get it? Because it's super important. What is the assignment fee? Is it $1,000 or $2,000? Is it $5,000? And then if it was like a house, so we don't see anyone assign houses pretty much ever these days. But if it was a new construction house, the builders can charge $10,000 to $25,000. They don't really like you to assign houses. So houses usually, like new construction, they are usually for the end user. It's rare to see an assignment, but I do see them, but it's rare. So you really need to make massive profit kind of to like if you're going to make $200,000-300,000, you might want to pay $25,000, not the end of the world. Then what are the tax implications? It'll likely be income tax in the highest tax bracket, but you want to talk to your financial advisor. We don't advise on tax, but I just want you to know you'll be paying HST on your profit. You'll be paying income tax on your profit, at least those two, okay? So, and then you're going to pay your agent some commission, so put that in there too in your calculations, because once I pay all these things, how much will I make, right? And if there's money left over, then it's a good idea. If you're in the negative, maybe you don't want to assign. That's the simple way of explaining stuff. There's more. Do you have to make an additional deposit to assign? In many cases, you have one more deposit to make, maybe your last 5%, and you would have to make it to do your assignment, which is fine because you're about to get the money back, but that's just something to think of. And then finally, not finally, but the next thing is developer adjustments, which we'll talk about in a bit. But, adjustments these days are about 4 to 5% of the purchase price. And those are things like development charges and education levies, all the streets and schools and sidewalks and parks and all those things that builders charge for. Every builder charges for it in Ontario, very standard. Are they capped? If you're buying, are you going to get those caps? Like, so for instance, let's say they're capped at 5,000. So let's say it costs the builder 10,000 for development charges, but it's capped at 5. They can't charge you more than 5, which is beautiful. Are those caps transferable to you as the assignee, the new buyer? And that's something we as good lawyers check. And if it's not, can we advise you that there's a risk, or we can even negotiate. Like just yesterday, we negotiated with someone with another side saying, if it's over 5,000, you're going to pay the difference. So if it shows up to be 10,000 because it's not transferable, the seller is going to pay the other 5 or whatever it is. And that's rare, but those are negotiation terms that the lawyer does, not really the agent. So you want to be sure of that. And that's important. Think about if it was capped at 10,000 but not transferable, now you buy and it gets to closing day 2 years later and it's 25,000, that would be a shocker. It might not even be profitable. So things like that are important. Next, when you're doing assignments, you really want to try to do it before the occupancy happened. You can do them after occupancy, okay? But before occupancy, this whole $24,000 rebate thing, it's very easy because you're the first occupant or your tenant is the first occupant. It's very easy for us to get that rebate for you, okay? But if it's past the occupancy date, there's a level of complexity added because it's inferred that the previous owner has moved in. So you're not the primary or first person to live there. Now that's a problem. However, there are ways to get past that by getting them to sign an affidavit saying they never lived there. So those are things a lawyer adds to an agreement. Again, just small things you have to worry about.
Which is a really good point, because in a good market, we often tell people to wait until occupancy, because you're then an investor selling to an end user, someone who could get into the unit, physically touch it, smell it, see it. And you're going to get market value or closer to it if they could go in and see the unit, versus selling it on paper before. It's often an investor selling to an investor, and you can leave money on the table. So you've done many of those deals, and you've always included those affidavits where it's.
Yeah, exactly. Very important. And then always make your agreements conditional on lawyer review, because the agent could make a mistake. A line could be missed. It's very standard that this stuff happens. So you really want to put like a 5 to 6 day lawyer review clause so that both lawyers can review everything and make sure that they're happy. Typically, the purchaser's lawyer will draft it, and then the seller's lawyer will review it, and then the purchaser's lawyer will review it, and then it will go firm, and then it will go for consent, and then it will be firm, 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 and then it's done. Okay. When will the money be released? That's something you always want to think about. Okay. And basically the answer is that's part of what your realtor helps you and your lawyers help you to do. Because in the olden days, you would get money at final closing always. Then it shifted to you get your profit at consent. And now it's shifting again to some money on consent, like your deposit money back, so you're made whole if you're the seller. And then some money could be at occupancy and some money at final closing, but it depends. And you have to feel out the buyer. How much money do they have? If you can get more, get more. As a seller, get it all. Get it all right now, as every penny, right? As much as you can. And if you're the buyer, pay later, as much later as you can, right? So it really depends on who you are in this circumstance, okay? And then finally, as I said, just put it all together. How much is this all going to cost? What's the legal fees? What is the land transfer tax payable? And the land transfer tax is always payable on the larger price. So like if you bought it for 500,000, you're selling for 600,000, then land transfer tax is on 600,000, of course. The government always wants the bigger number. And I talked about this already. Oh, any questions? Let me see.
Yeah, there's quite a few.
Okay, sorry.
A lot of them are consistent with the HST, which I think people always get confused over, obviously, because there's HST on the income side, there's HST on the purchase side, and then the rebates. Do you want to touch on that a bit?
I'll touch on a few of these questions. Is the profit made on assignment sale, this is JP Selba. Is the profit made on assignment sale considered income earned? Usually, yes. Best to ask your accountant each time, but usually yes. For the CRA, which definitely raises your tax bracket, yes. Right up to the top tax bracket usually, because you're making some decent money on these things. So you can see how your taxes will go right up. That's for sure, yeah. Next one. Is HST actually, this is Suzanne, is HST actually 13%? I've seen the 24K info rebate, but my condo at 500K will be much more HST than that. I'm also familiar with the rebate. Okay, so Suzanne, this is a great question. I don't know if I touch on it in this talk, but I'll just.
This is an important question because it's very confusing. So please.
And I've called Ryan on this before many years ago. I said, Ryan, we got to talk. And so he understands it, but
I understand it very well now.
But every realtor I speak to doesn't, to be honest. So this is great for you guys to hear all this. So here we go. Just remember this. If you remember anything today, remember this. When you buy new construction, HST is included in the purchase price. It's that simple. So if you're buying a property for 600,000, HST is included. So when anyone asks you, is HST included in the purchase price of new construction? The answer is yep, it's included. The HST rebate, which is not HST, it's something else, is not included. So the HST rebate these days is 24,000. It used to be a convoluted calculation, but it's just 24,000 because all the properties are over 450,000 these days. So the HST rebate is not included in the purchase price unless you're living there as your primary place of residence. So let's back it up. If you're going to live there as your primary place of residence, HST is included because we said that. And so is the HST rebate. It's included too. So you only pay the purchase price. So using the example of 500,000, if the property is 500,000 and you're going to live there as your primary place of residence, you just pay 500,000 for the property. You don't pay HST because you already paid it, and you don't pay the 24K. It's already included in the purchase price. So that's simple. If you're not going to live there, then you do have to pay the HST rebate of 24,000. So you pay 524,000 instead of 500,000. 24,000 more than the same dude who was about to buy the same property as you, but they're going to live there. And that sounds unfair, but the good news is you get the full 24,000 back 4 months after the final closing, whether you're living there or not. So it's not a big deal. You just output the 24,000 and it comes back. It's not a big deal. And that's it for that. So I hope that answers that question. Suzanne. Can the assigner include in the assignment contract that the assignee pays the HST? Not really. No lawyer will agree to that one. They always say HST included, and I've never seen that one go over. And I don't think the answer. I think the answer is no, Lynn.
I think technically you can. It's just no one actually accepts that.
It's a big one, but I like your style, Lynn. Good job.
Yeah, no, me too.
Okay. The HST on the profit, is it after some base amount or apply to full profit? I want you to check this with your accountant always, but it's the full profit. Like if you sold for 500, if you bought for 500, sold for 600, you made 100, it's HST on the 100.
Yeah. That's my understanding as well.
Okay. So that's good. I'll shift back into here and then I'll come back to see if there's some of these any other questions that I can answer. Did the government make a tax change recently that the gain on the sale of property held less than 1 year is taxed as income? I don't know this fine detail, so you might want to ask the accountant one on that one. Anonymous attendee. Okay, I think we're good. Can you go? Okay, yeah. So transferability. I talked about transferability, and I'm just going to drive that one home again. Transferability means if there's caps, like if all the costs were capped in the original, does this new person, the assignee, get the same cap? So you just want to make sure of that, okay? And you don't always get that. Sometimes they're not. So then you just need to be advised of that and advised of what it could be and the risks. That's all. Or you work it into the agreement with the seller. If the seller is desperate enough to sell, you can work it in. If they're not, then you won't. Okay, so these are things to think about. And that just really brings home the fact that it's time for realtors to play the game again. Like real estate was so busy that, to be honest, a lot of people could be a realtor and they were getting deals left, right, and center, and they didn't have to be great at their job. And nowadays, realtors have to be great at their job and have to get back to the negotiating table. It's not like, every price works. You can actually get your realtor to work for you, which is great. I made this slide. I don't want to get too deep and dirty into it, but you are all probably very smart and investors, and you like to see numbers. This is an actual page from Form 150 or RIA Schedule B. For all we know, Ryan did this one. I don't know. But it shows the numbers. And why I write don't skip this step here is this is where you say when things get paid out. And we added this, and Ryan, you can start using this, but we added this bottom 2 paragraphs that we add now of our own, which just says for clarity, the balance due on number 6, which is the balance due, 170,000 is payable like this. $40,000 on builder consent, as I mentioned, $30,000 on occupancy, and $100,000 on final closing. And people sign off on that, and there's no questions about it. And I don't know if you've done assignments before, but they're ugly. The realtors mess them up. We made this beautiful way, 1 page, everyone understands it. And I put these huge, by the way, you can use this, Ryan, and any realtor who's here can use it too. Big minuses and pluses I made. So literally, it's so easy right now. 1 minus 2 plus 3 equals 4. See how easy we made it?
Yeah.
And then it's just an easy to fill in form here.
That's awesome. I was adding those extra things to the Schedule B for a long time because it's difficult to interpret this. Like a lot of people can view it a different way. So the fact that you've done it this way is extremely helpful for anyone.
Thank you. And the way, you should read this, guys. The numbers make sense. There's really no other way to read it. This is the way to read it. Okay. Beautiful. And then just to look at the bottom here, I said when it's payable. See, there's a difference between payable and released, guys. Payable means when the person, the assignee, has to pay it to the lawyer. But that doesn't mean it gets released to the seller, see? And here, even though they pay it all different times, the amounts get released at different times, at $80,000 upon 3 days of receipt of the signed consent and $130,000 on final closing. So it's a beautiful way of explaining when the money comes in, when it goes out, and how. And so a lot of realtors are really using this thing that we created. Okay, and you guys are free to use it too. I kind of said this a few times, but I just want to drive it home as we're, closing out. The sellers, you as the assignor, if you're selling, you're responsible to pay consent fees, legal fees to your lawyer, commission to your agent, HST, as we said, and income tax. We've said this before. I don't want to get too deep into clauses because I assume we don't have a ton of realtors here, but there are clauses that you want to add if you're the assignor. Things that would protect you. So if you're selling, you want to make sure that you're not going to pay the HST rebate, but the purchaser will. So we put those in. You want to make sure that the assignee notifies you when they hear about the final closing, because you won't hear about it now that you've assigned it. We actually put in the contract. They legally must tell you about it. If there's any extras and upgrades, they have to accept it the way it is, because you don't want them complaining that you ordered white tiles, but they got gray tiles after all that. And you also say that you promise to close, and that if there's any damages because you don't close, that you'll cover them. It's true you could get sued if you don't close anyway, but this is just an added bonus. So these are some common clauses, and we've worked with Ryan for years, so we always add these into his agreements, etc., if he hasn't already put them in. If you're acting for the buyer of the assignee, again, you want to cap those closing costs. You want to add a clause to cap the closing costs, and you definitely want to get 7 days, 5 days lawyer review, because a lawyer does actually need to review this in depth. It's not a status certificate like a condo. It's not a simple agreement. This involves reviewing multiple agreements and having back and forth. It's real law stuff. It's more legal work than real estate lawyers typically do, to be very honest. If you're looking at the complexity levels higher, let's just say it's the highest level of
Real estate
complexity.
agents as well.
And I say same, and I always say this too, because I give a lot of talks to realtors too. This isn't a joke. This is serious, and you can make some big mistakes as a realtor if you don't do an assignment right. So you want a good one, a good realtor, good lawyer on these things. It's different. Again, if you're acting for the buyer, you want to make sure that the seller pays their own taxes. You don't want to be caught up in that. If there's any NSF fees, like they bounced a check or two, which always happens, you want them to cover for it, not you. And if there's a pre-delivery inspection, you want to be the one doing it, right? Because you're the one buying, okay? Look at that. I don't even know what time it is. Yeah, 6:45. It's pretty close.
We made good time. I just want to talk about a few things. I have a few questions, and then let's go through the chat. I'll answer some of them. But so what happens if someone wants to assign their unit right now and they can't assign it? What is happening if they can't assign it and then they can't close? Because it's a real concern right now. And before you answer that, I just want to point out that when we work with our clients, we're always saying, look, if you're buying to assign, there are precautionary measures to that. First of all, we always say buy with plan A, but always have plan B. Always have the ability to close in case you can't assign it. And if you want to reduce the risk and increase your success in assigning, you want to buy in a project that is typically 4 to 6 years out. The longer, further out it is, the less risk you have and the more profit you'll have to be able to assign. So that's very important, because right now we're reading a lot in the news about people, how they're losing money, they're not able to close, they're not able to assign. A lot of those purchasers have bought in projects that are ready in 1 year, 2 years. I've seen dozens of them. And there's no way I would ever guide a client to have them buy in a project if their intention is to assign when the project is going to be ready in 1 or 2 years. It's just way too risky. So I want to just kind of get that the elephant in the room. Assignments are not toxic. There is a lot of success with them. In fact, our best client has anywhere from 2 to probably 6 assignments, because he's been doing this for 20 years, closing every single year. And he has them staggered, and he does it through a corporation, so his taxes are minimalized. And he's doing it in a way where he's able to assign for small and often large profits in a corporate structure to keep the money in a corporate. I'm not an accountant, so I don't want to get into all that, but he does it in a way that he's got a very successful business. Now, if he's not able to assign one, he's got the ability to close on it. So let's try to answer that for me. What happens in today's market if someone bought to assign and cannot assign?
Yeah. And I've had it happen.
You can't close.
It might even be happening to me on one of my deals. But anyway, yeah, you're right about this whole, like, if you really want as many years between signing and closing as possible to help make things easier, especially as an investor. But yeah, so let's say you bought to assign, which isn't the best idea, but you did. And we're getting close to closing and you're trying everything you can to assign and there's no buyer, okay? One, you might want to lower your price to par, meaning if you've put out 100,000 and there's another 900,000 to pay, you might want to sell it for $1 million, get your 100,000, just walk away. So lowering your price is one thing, and then lowering your price more is another thing. So now you might want to lower the 1 million to 900, where you lose your 100,000, but you walk away from what I'm about to say, okay? Because if you don't sell, and by the way, everything I'm telling you is happening in my office. Everything I say comes from experience of files in my office now. Otherwise, so everything I say is real and happening. Meaning I'm seeing people sell at par, I'm seeing people sell at a loss, and I'm seeing people sell at profit every day right now.
Yeah.
So if you haven't been able to sell it at par or at a loss and you can't close because you don't have the money, you called all your friends and relatives and you tried everything, then you don't close on the day of closing, then a nasty letter comes, okay? And that letter comes from the builder and it says you're in default. It says they're going to keep your current deposits, let's say 130,000, just to give you a number. It says they're going to relist the property and they get to list it on MLS and they're going to try to mitigate their damages and they're going to sue you for the difference of what they find. Now, let me tell you, your deposits, that's not part of it. So let's say let's use some example. Let's say you were going to pay 800,000 for the property. You've done 100,000 in deposits. And let's say they sell it for 700,000. You would say, well, you have my 100 to make up. So you've made 800, so you're good to go. Don't sue me. And they'd say, no, the 100,000 is not damages. So the 100,000 we keep because it says in the agreement, if you don't close, we keep your deposit. So now we've lost 100,000. We're suing you for 100, and they can sue for 100. Have I seen bill?
It's happening. There was one that was very public where a developer went immediately after they defaulted to the Supreme Court, I believe it was.
Yes.
And but also damages. So
exactly. So yeah, and I was in that article. There's a Globe and Mail article. I was in that article.
I didn't read the whole thing. Sorry, I missed it.
Yeah. Lately, Globe and Mail has been calling me once a week, which is great. So I'm in there all the time. Yeah, like in that case, the builder, a small builder, is actually chasing their purchasers who can't close. What will the larger builders do? We don't know yet. I've been speaking.
Well, one larger builder was the one who went to the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
A very big builder.
Yeah, so we're going to see it. We're going to see it happen here as more people can't close, and you'll see it. The purchase.
That's a really important point. Again, like I talked about this, the time value of money. Like, don't buy something that's ready in 1 year if you want to assign it. And first of all, you want to be able to have the ability to close. We don't have these problems with our clients. We're buying in projects that have long runways. Most of our clients have the ability to close. I'm an advocate of buying and holding real estate for the long term. That is, the majority of my properties are buy and holds. It eliminates the risk. So you're going to be able to close on it. And even if you've lost 100,000 on the deposit, you're not going to lose it if you hang on to it for another 3, 4, 5, 6 years. That property is going to be worth a lot more money. So I just wanted to add that. I had another thought, but I lost it. But go ahead, David. Go ahead and finish your thought.
No, so it's important to be able to close. If not, the builder can get aggressive. And even at that point, if they are aggressive, you can beg them to allow you to assign again. Like, meaning we have had cases where we've asked for extensions from the builder. And by the way, extensions are extremely expensive from a builder. It could be $3,000, $4,000 to extend to give us time to assign it. And they have allowed, and we've found a buyer in an ever-changing market that's going on right now. So yeah, it's very important to really know your stuff and have good professionals helping you when it gets to an assignment. I do have a QR code here that you can snap at the bottom right, which takes you to the website. I think I have everything. I had one more, I thought. Yeah. If you like social media stuff, you can follow me on Instagram, and I am available to you guys any way you want. You can text me, you can email me, you can TikTok me, you can Instagram me, whatever it is. So feel free to add me on Instagram now. That way you can always reach me. I know it's amazing how many realtors reach out to me on Instagram to start a deal. It's mind-boggling. And then we have an online cost calculator. You can always use a very detailed one. So like it asks all the questions and gives you a real quote. But you can always reach out to us for quotes too. We do quotes all day for our clients, and we're glad to help out with any questions. We work very closely with Ryan and his team, and a lot of his clients are like my friends now. Like, I'll be honest, it's been great. So I enjoy all the clients you send to us are very exciting people actually, and I enjoy working with them all.
Yeah, and then also, so the one thing with assignments as well, we're talking a lot about investors who bought and kind of how that all happens. Right now, there's also an opportunity to buy assignments. So if any of you on this call or watch this video later on want assignment opportunities, I call them, reach out to us. I picked up 3 assignments last year. You know, I always say investing in pre-construction condos, not low rise, because you don't get the deposits back of a project, not necessarily if a project doesn't move forward. But the worst case scenario, if a project doesn't get built, you get 100% of your investment back. So the risk is very, very minimal when you invest in pre-construction condos. Now, if you bought a condo a year ago and it closes today and it's worth less than what you paid for it a year ago, then you could actually lose money and have risk of getting sued by the builder. But we have buyers that are interested in finding those types of deals. So if you're one of those sellers, reach out to us. We can help you find it. I put a link in the webinar chat where you can fill out the form. And if you're an investor that's looking for opportunities, there are opportunities out there as well where people would be happy to sell at what they paid, you know, 2-3 years ago, just because they don't want to close right now. And then another point I would just like to add, because I'm certainly feeling it right now, and a lot of people are, you know, it's been a storm. It's been a challenging market, and interest rates have made it very, very challenging. I just want to remind everyone that this is a storm that we're going through. And on the other side of this, it's very bright. There's a lot of opportunity. Real estate prices are going to go up, and we just need to get through this. And I think we've turned a corner, and we're starting to see that already on the resale side and assignment side, which is really great. So Todd Hunter, I'll answer his question. Hey, Todd. It depends. Like, absolutely. I've got, like I said, my best client who's bought probably 50 plus units from me and purchased and had David help him on 50 plus units, continues to buy and continues to flip and assign every single year, multiple units for profits. Again, I'm a buy and hold. He does it through a corporation to minimize the taxes. So there's certainly opportunities to do that.
He's an inspiration, by the way, this guy.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
and if he's and then Todd, if he told me, you know, I want to buy in this project that's ready in a year, you know, there's a good chance that if his sole mission was to assign, it would be very risky and probably not a good move. So it really depends on the project. There's still great opportunities, I think, if that's your plan.
Amazing.
Thomas, yeah, thanks for attending. Thank you, everyone. There's some thank yous there. I think we
Thanks,
answered
everybody.
everything.
Nice. Thanks, everybody. It was really great. Feel free to reach out.
All right, guys. Thanks, David. I will see and talk to you soon. You're closing on my property tomorrow, so I will talk to you tomorrow.
Okay. We'll see you
And
later.
thanks again. Appreciate everything.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
Yes.